Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Hello, I'm Danielle Teal, your host for the Our Town podcast, a KSMQ Public Television show. This podcast covers important topics, events, businesses, organizations, and happenings across Rochester. It's the show about Rochester. And today we have Jinny Rietmann from the Workforce Development, and she is going to be here to talk about, I know that you all may have some questions, I'm going to ask them for you, but some of the unemployment rates in the community and beyond, and what is happening with some of the industries that appear to be short-staffed across the community too. So welcome, Jinny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So tell us a little bit about you really quickly. What is your role? And then we'll dive into some of these questions.
Sure. So again, my name is Jinny Rietmann, and I'm the Executive Director with Workforce Development Incorporated. And we are a nonprofit organization that provides employment and training services throughout Southeast Minnesota. So we actually cover a 10-county region in Southeast Minnesota. And we are housed in some of the career force locations. So we're close partners with the career force system, but we also have some standalone offices where it's just Workforce Development Inc. And then I also represent the Workforce Development Board of Southeast Minnesota. So this board is made up of private business that comprises, individuals from various key industry sectors in our region, as well as geographic representation, making sure that we have representation from each of the 10 counties that we serve in Southeast Minnesota.
Well, you're definitely probably in the know when it comes to this topic. So first questions first, what is the employment rate for Rochester and how does this relate to the rest of the state and the country?
Yeah, so I think our recent unemployment rate for the city of Rochester was 3.4%. Typically in Southeast Minnesota, we actually fare pretty well when it comes to unemployment rates and employment rates, and particularly after or during and after the pandemic and during and after recessions. Southeast Minnesota typically fares better than other parts of the country for a number of reasons, particularly because of the diverse representation of business sectors that we have in Southeast. We have a very strong healthcare presence, obviously, but we also have very strong manufacturing, hospitality, tourism, all the other kind of sectors. And so because of that diversification, we usually fare pretty well. And so our unemployment rate is 3.4%. We have the labor force, I think I have that in front of me here, is at 66,720. And there are 2,250 individuals who are currently unemployed.
Oh, interesting. So how does that compare to the state and national? Do we have those benchmark markings?
Yeah, and we look, again, we fare pretty well. We look, our unemployment rate is lower, typically lower than a smidge lower than the state rate, but it's also significantly lower typically than the federal rate when you're looking at the pandemic and again recessions and things like that. So yeah, we're doing pretty well for unemployment and employment in Rochester and the surrounding communities. I think what the bigger topic is then is the workforce shortage and, not having enough individuals to fill the positions that are available. So unemployment, I don't want to say it's a thing of the past from the pandemic, because there are still absolutely people that have been affected and still individuals who are out there and who are struggling and who are looking for work. But it's not solely a topic or an issue that's due to the pandemic at this point in time.
So, as we know, there was some financial stabilization for some organizations and, different industries across the community and across the state and country. There was this urgency to provide supplemental support. And what came of it was the additional unemployment benefits to help bridge some of the, gap there. Is that still being dispersed?
It is, yes. There's an extra $300 that's still being dispersed, and that goes until or through September, I believe, at this point in time. So that extra, benefit to those individuals is still available. I really highly doubt that it would go past September.
Okay. And then, following the pandemic, what changes do you see coming to those who are unemployed, businesses with the labor shortages? And we'll kind of get into some industries that have those shortages as well.
So are you asking about the career seeker side or the business side?
What changes do you see for those who are unemployed as far as what they're seeking? Are they changing their careers then to kind of funnel into a different pathway?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that the unemployment payments, may play somewhat of a role in a person's returning to work. You hear that a lot, and we hear a lot of businesses and others kind of um, concerned that that's part of the reason, but I think it's probably not the major reason. There's still people out there who are waiting to be recalled by their employer, and there is this fear of COVID, and there's lack of childcare, and there's a lot of individuals who left the workforce. And honestly, what we're hearing is a little bit of a value shift. We're hearing that individuals have made it work thus far, or they've shifted their household makeup in terms of who's working and who's not, and maybe have made some changes that will be permanent. So we are hearing some of that. But I also think that part of the factor that is impacting any individuals that are changing in the workforce is wages, and stability of those positions. In Rochester and the surrounding area, again, some of our occupations that are most prevalent, like the food preparation and serving related occupations, those median wages right now are around $13.31, and $14.50 in personal care and service occupations. And so, to kind of put that into perspective, each parent in a typical family would need to earn $17.66 in order to meet our basic cost of living in Southeast Minnesota. So I'm sharing all this data that I received from our regional labor market analyst. I have to give him a shout out, Mark Schultz.
Yeah, this is helpful information. Wow.
It gave me some updated numbers here this morning. So to put that into comparison, it's really hard for individuals in those positions to make a living wage to support their family, and particularly, increased number of children, increase that burden. And so, I think that that's maybe a bigger factor than just simply looking at, the effects of the pandemic or the effects of childcare alone, although that is a huge cost as well. And then, you bring in the lack of childcare opportunities, and that's another factor that's playing into this. So I guess, the short answer is that the picture is more complicated than it looks from afar. It's easy to say that somebody that is on unemployment accessing that additional benefit, maybe not be interested in returning to the workforce.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you're calling that out. And I'll tell you really quickly, Jinny, why. I was at a restaurant last weekend on my vacation, and we were ordering food. The person quit on the spot. And I was surprised by that. I had never seen that happen. And then another person came and provided that support, and we talked to the manager. The manager, shared with us, the circumstances. They were short staffed and that sort of thing. And, I shared it with some friends and things. And some of the comments that I got back was, well, because the person's getting unemployment, additional payments, they can, so I think it's really great that you bring up that point that it may not necessarily be that it is way more complex, that the living wage is a critical component to that. What else would you share in that respect?
Yeah, it's definitely more complex, like I said, than it looks from afar. Not only the cost of living, childcare, and other kind of costs that go into a person's decision, but honestly, it's also a job seekers market right now. I mean, you look at the workforce shortage, it is a huge issue right now. It's a huge topic for Southeast Minnesota, and it's a job seeker market, like I said. So that person that was frustrated for whatever reason, doesn't need to necessarily stay in a place of employment that's not serving them well any longer when they have so many other opportunities available to them. And I think that's what's happening across the region. It's bringing some major competition, between businesses and industries alike. So yeah, the situation is very complex, and it's going to be an interesting, really decade that we're moving into here, because those numbers, when you look at the population, they're not going to be improving anytime soon. There's just simply not enough bodies, if you will, to fill the needs. So we need to get creative, we need to work together, and we need to address these challenges as a region.
And businesses, are facing these challenges with having short staff. What do you think the businesses are going to have to do to be able to retain talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a complex topic. It's a number of things. It's not just about raising wages, but that's definitely going to be part of it. There's a lot of articles coming out from Department of Labor, kind of talking about the job seeker market, if you will, and how, it's really an opportunity for employers to, an opportunity, if you will, for them to raise their wages and to really look at the structure of our cost of living in Southeast Minnesota, particularly in Rochester, where it's very expensive to live. But it's more than that. It's about making an individual's strengths are being, utilized. It's about looking at a person's value sets. Like I said, a lot of people have changed their thinking in terms of what their world of work could look like. Some people that wanted to work remotely before can now, and those that didn't want to work remotely maybe are looking for something that's more in person. So all those kinds of decisions that go into your happiness at work are really coming into play here. Is the culture, is the workplace culture positive for what their needs and desires are? Is there adequate childcare? Is the childcare cost prohibitive for them to be, in that particular working environment? You think about retail and hospitality, which is really huge in Rochester. That's really hard to find childcare for those kinds of positions. So, I mean, again, that picture is very complex. And I think every organization right now, including my own organization, is really looking internally and saying, how are we competitive? How can we remain competitive? And how can we continue to be competitive into this new work world? And how do we make sure that the individuals that we are attracting are also being retained? And it's a much different conversation, I would say, than it was a year ago. And so I just think that a business needs to look at their entire company culture and look at, changes, whether they be small or big, that they can make incrementally to continue to stay competitive.
For more information about this story and other Our Town features, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter at KSMQ #OurTown, or ksmq.org/OurTown.
Oh, well, that you're not one of my kind. This old story.
Hey Rochester, this is Michael Wojak with your Our Town Rundown. Get to talk about one of my favorite topics today, and that is urban trees. The Park Board met recently to talk about the Urban Forest Master Plan, and this is the long-term plan to create a healthy urban forest in the city of Rochester. I could talk about trees all day. There's so many benefits, particularly of street trees. There's the ones that everyone knows about. They reduce pollution, they create oxygen, they create shade, but that manifests itself in many ways. Did you know that street trees actually reduce the amount of water that hits our storm sewer system immediately after storms, actually saving us money by having green infrastructure in place? Did you know the trees also, in the shade that they create, they actually extend the life of asphalt, meaning less infrastructure costs replacing the asphalt. On top of that, because trees do cool the ground around, it reduces the urban heat island effect. These are all tremendous benefits to go along with the property values and just making neighborhoods more walkable in general. So get out there, enjoy the trees planted by previous generations, and be part of that solution for future generations as well. We'll follow this as the Park Board continues to discuss the plan. The farmers market is back down at Graham Park, regular hours. That's from 7:30 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. You'll find live music down there. You get to get out and support local farmers and enjoy the community as well. The Rochester Hunkers are playing baseball again as of the time that I'm recording this. They are undefeated at 2-0. Irrespective of the record, it's just great to get out in the summer and enjoy some local baseball, and that's at Mayo Field downtown. On Water is coming to a close at the Rochester Art Center. The closing exhibition is going to be Sunday from 2 to 4, and admission is free. And finally, We Bike Rochester has created an event called Picnic, Pedal, and Pub, where at 5:30 you meet at various locations for a picnic. You do a bike ride, and then you do a little socializing at the pub. Give it a shot. I'm looking forward to joining, and that's going to be on Tuesday evening.
Jinny, you mentioned some gaps in infrastructure and that sort of thing in the community, childcare. There needs to be, more availability for that, and of course other resources. Do you think Rochester is receptive and poised to help build upon that infrastructure so it's in place to support the workforce?
Employers, you said Rochester employers?
The community as a whole, and supporting these additional needs or fill these gaps as a whole. I know they're working on housing units, making sure that there's some housing units, childcare availability for in-home or day centers. There's not enough. I mean, right. I remember back in the day having to sign up a year in advance. I mean, I think a lot of us know that gig that became new parents and that sort of thing. So do you think that Rochester's poised and ready, that there's concerted additional efforts to make sure that infrastructure supports the workforce so that they're able to go to work?
I would say that there are definitely concerted efforts happening. I think that there's a number of groups that I'm a part of, Southeast Minnesota Together, the mayor's office. I mean, there's a lot of different entities out there that are working on topics, the Housing Alliance, like you mentioned. There are a number of groups that are working on these topics, and they're working together. So there are definitely concerted efforts. What I would say needs to happen is a level of urgency, and a level of funding that needs to be, attached to some of these initiatives. I can't speak to where that funding's going to come from, honestly, but there needs to be a level of urgency that maybe isn't always there, but also it's a long-term plan. It takes time to make some of these changes. I would say employers, though, are on board. The leaders in the community at the table for some of these convenings, discussing their, not only their kind of creative ideas, but how they're willing to make changes for their workplace and things like that. So I think change is happening, change is slow and change is hard, but I think as a community, we are poised well because we work well together.
For some of the organizations, businesses that have the staffing challenges, is there support in Rochester to help backfill and provide that support? Is workforce development helping with some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get calls every single day from employers, just saying we're going to be expanding, or we are adding, or we are losing, or, whatever the situation might be. Can you help us fill our needs? And the answer is always yes. I mean, we will always help to share, as a convener, our role is really to help to connect that career seeker with that employer. But I will tell you that the level of need out there is much greater than the number of bodies available. And so it's making sure that those people that are coming through our doors, when I'm talking about career seekers here, that they're getting the information that they need, that they're getting the training and the skills that they need, because we can't afford to let somebody, sit by the sidelines, and we can't afford to not make sure that they're getting the training that they need. So that's really what our role is. But we do support employers to make sure that their postings are getting out there, that we're connecting individuals, and sometimes even building a specific pipeline. We have a number of career pathways training programs, for example, that have very specific pathways into an industry or into an employer, so we can help build those as well.
We discussed that, and you had mentioned so well about how the values and perspectives of some people in the workforce is changing. They're changing what they want to do, how they want to work, where they want to work. What is the most popular industry right now where people are flocking to and they want to be in that?
Um, I don't know that I can answer that. Intelligently anyway. I think that there's a lot of individuals that are leaving. I can tell you that I know that there's a lot of individuals that are leaving, kind of serving related occupations and
And
those.
that's why there's this shortage.
Right.
Yeah.
Partly from the pandemic still, but also just partly because of other opportunities in other sectors. And a lot of them are moving into, kind of healthcare positions. Some of them are switching, 100% going into construction and trades kinds of things. And so, you do see a little bit of that kind of switching gears, I guess, if you will, and trying to upskill, trying to make a better life for them and their families, and to get that better wage and better benefits and all of that. One of the major changes it's not a change actually, but one of the things that we do see a lot is individuals kind of looking at the benefit structure. It's not all about the wage all the time. Sometimes it's about the benefits or the family benefits and those kinds of things. And some of those lower paying occupations don't always provide, benefits, especially if they're part-time, for example. So we do see a fair amount of that coming in our doors. It's just people that want help to move into that new career.
Given that it seems like we're starting to phase back into some semblance of normalcy, hopefully, it's not going to look the same probably like it did over a year ago, but what are some innovative ways that your organization has helped support the workforce and businesses in the community?
Well, I think one thing is just providing an opportunity for them to connect with one another and to network. Through our workforce development board, we hosted a forum this in April, a workforce development forum where people could learn about best practices from other businesses. I think one of the sessions we hosted was the change in the workforce or something to that effect, where businesses were talking about the changes that they've had to make and those that were temporary versus those that are permanent. So a way for them to connect. We work obviously really closely with the chamber and things as well. But also, just kind of being that being able to speak through the career seekers, lens and to be able to provide employers the information about who's out there, who is out there, what kind of people are looking for jobs, what are the skills that they need, what can an employer offer for training that's not being offered either in a formalized setting or at all, and how can they start providing opportunities for their staff as well. We have a lot of employers too that are kind of jumping on board with incumbent worker training or, training those individuals that are already currently working with them to help them into a better, career within the organization versus leaving their organization. So it's really just kind of figuring out, sometimes it's just very small incremental, changes or updates or upgrades, if you will, that you can make to remain and become more competitive.
You had mentioned remote workers. That is definitely a segment that has expanded significantly is this move to work from home. Are you finding that the workforce needs more upskilling in that regard, or has that been an easy transition?
No, I think there's definitely some opportunity there or information sharing that needs to happen or training that needs to happen. I don't think everybody is their situation, isn't always conducive to remote work. And even if it is, not everyone is successful in that, so I think that there's a lot out there already. I mean, we wouldn't recreate the wheel, but we'll certainly share resources about where somebody can find information about how, just how to set up your home work environment or how to, time manage, those kinds of topics that are just seem small, but really, if you can get it right, can be a huge, benefit to not only the person, but the business. So yeah, there's a lot out there. And I think that there's a lot more that's needed, especially because it's been such a huge shift. I mean, it's not just, one industry that's going remote. It's across the country, as you know. So yeah, it's a big shift, and I think a lot of people need more assistance than they're probably getting.
How do you think the mental and emotional well-being of what you're seeing in your work of people in the workforce that may be challenged in finding something right now? I know that there there's definitely jobs available. So it's a job seeker environment, but we never know what somebody's experiencing and how, and it's got to be the right fit too. So what are the services being provided for that? And what are you seeing as well?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question because it reminds me of something that I feel is very important to share with businesses. And that is that not everybody even knows that there are that many jobs out there. And businesses go, what? How would you not know? There's help wanted signs everywhere. And we have 150 openings right now or whatever it is.
In Rochester, 150 openings? Oh,
no, I'm saying like a business will say that, you know?
Right. Okay.
No, there's many more than that.
I was gonna say.
But what I'm saying is it is surprising because we do hear on a regular basis that career seekers don't either know about the opportunities or they don't feel that they would be competitive for that opportunity, even though when you look at their job history or their resume, they certainly are competitive in that. So I think that there's a bit of exhaustion. Well, there's not a bit, there's a lot of exhaustion on the employer side in posting positions and interviewing and not having people show up for interviews and not being able to fill positions. And
I've heard that, Jinny, of the ghosting. They're applying and then they ghost the interviewer. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that that's any different than it has been, but I think because of that exhaustion, employers are really getting exhausted. And my advice would just be that you got to keep moving because like I said, a lot of these career seekers are coming in and they're saying, well, I don't think that there's a lot of jobs out there. And we're going, wait a minute, what? There are jobs. There's thousands of jobs. So get it, so I think we need to look at how we're marketing the employment opportunities that are available. Where are they being marketed? Are they really reaching out to the communities that are maybe most underrepresented, if you will, or communities that don't typically look at Indeed.com if it is, or the newspaper or whatever it is. And so I think that that's another kind of step in the right direction, is just to really look at your recruitment strategies and how are you reaching out to all the communities within Rochester, not just one community that looks at your Facebook page or whatever. So
we had talked about how businesses are going to have to change some of their dynamics, their services, how they provide it. What do you think is the one big thing that was done well during the pandemic that should continue into the new normal?
I think that there is a new desire for work-life balance. I think there was some desire before, but there wasn't support for it. I think people were still running the rat race, if you will, before COVID. And I think that that's put a new light on and shown that we can have, a bit of a work-life balance. So what does that look like? Every employer, obviously, it's going to be a little bit different, but I would say that that's probably one of the biggest value shifts, and that people are saying, you know what, I kind of liked that I got to pick up my kid an hour earlier, or I got to be home in the evenings and not attending work events or not working till 10 o'clock at night or whatever it is, and so I'm going to demand that continues in my life, and if it's not through my current position, then I'm going to find one that it does. So I'd say, work-life balance.
That's really good feedback, Jinny. I definitely agree with you in that. And I think that is a plus. That's a positive outcome if we can have that. I really appreciate you being on the show. You gave some very insightful, helpful information. Thank you so much, Jinny.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks for tuning into Our Town, the podcast, a KSMQ Public Television show. This is your host, Danielle Teal. Thank you so much for listening in and watching. You can catch up with us on Facebook or Twitter at KSMQ #OurTown.